First section of notes today is titled Simplify. More radicals. First problem is a radical sign with a fraction 21 over 49. When you take a radical or square root of a fraction, you can break that up for a radical of the numerator and a radical of the denominator. Radical 21, if you try and factor 21, that would be 7 times 3, but there's no pairs and no other factoring. So radical 21 would stay the same. And the radical or square root of 49 would be 7. Our final answer would be radical 21 over 7. The 21 and 7 you cannot divide because one's inside the radical and one's outside the radical. Next question is radical 360 divided by 121. And again, you can take the radical of the top number and also a radical of the denominator. In this case, 360 we can factor. When a number ends in 0 again, that would be 10 times the number. In this case, 10 times 36. 36 would be 6 times 6. One shortcut, we could factor these 6's here. Or again, we can circle them because we're looking for pairs of numbers. The 10 we can factor, 2, 5, and 2. In this case, we'd have a 6 outside the radical. There's a 5 and a 2 left. Multiplying those, we'd have a 10 inside the radical. And the square root of 121 would be 11. So our final answer would be 6 radical 10 divided by 11. Last problem for the section. Radical 5 divided by 9a to the 4th. And again, we can split this up with the radical of the numerator and a radical of the denominator. Radical 5 again would stay the same. That cannot be factored or simplified. The square root of 9 would be 3. And for the variables, a to the 4th, again, you can write down 4 a's, circle the pairs. There's 2 sets of a's, which would be a squared. So our final answer would be radical 5 divided by 3a squared. Last section of notes for this section is rationalizing the denominator. First question for this section is 3 divided by radical 2. For fractions, it's okay to have a radical in the numerator, but if there's a radical in the denominator, we can rationalize it or simplify it. In this case, what we're going to do is if we have radical 2, we will multiply by the same radical for the denominator and also multiply the numerator by that same number. The numerator is 3 times the radical 2. Again, a number and a radical, you cannot multiply together, you just write them side by side. For the denominator, they're both radicals, so you can multiply both of those. 2 times 2 would be radical 4. Simplifying, the numerator would stay the same, and the denominator, square root of 4, would be 2. So our final answer would be 3 radical 2 divided by 2. Again, it's okay to have a radical in the numerator, you just can't have it in the denominator. And these 2's again do not cancel because one's inside a radical and one is not. Last question for this section. Radical 3 divided by radical 7x. Again, for this question, you'll multiply whatever radical's in the denominator, multiply by that same radical for the numerator and denominator. In this case, it's radical 7x. The numerator are both radicals or square roots, so you can cancel those or multiply those together. 7 times 3 would be 21, and the x would be left over. For the denominator, again, they're both in radical form, so 7 times 7 would be 49, and x times x would be x squared. Simplifying, you can try and do a factor tree on 21. The only two numbers are 7 and 3, so there's no pairs. So this radical would stay the same. For the denominator, square root of 49 would be 7, and the square root of x squared, again, you can write both x's down if you want. There's a single pair of x's, so the square root of x squared would be x. And your final answer would be radical 21x divided by 7x. And again, the numerator is in the radical, the denominator is not, so you cannot simplify the 21 and 7 or the x's.